Howdy folks, and welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. I'm your host Michael, and today we're going to be hearing a few stories from Preston Ward of MtnPhysio. Now, Dr. Ward, as I like to call him, is a physical therapist who specializes in keeping hunters in the woods and not at home injured. Full disclosure, I am a patient of his, and at the time that we actually recorded this podcast, we had just done our first call to help me with my back, which is a problem that I've had for years. Now, after Preston's stories, I will provide an update on how I'm doing currently after about a month and a half of working with him. So, all that being said, today we do have a great story from Preston. He actually drew a very elusive buffalo tag in Utah. It's a once-in-a-lifetime tag, and only one is given out each year. So today he's going to tell us about that hunt and why it was so special to him, and he follows that up with a couple other little smaller stories as well on the back end. So I want to say thank you to Preston again for coming on, and I hope you all enjoy his stories as much as I did. Now, let's let Preston tell you his stories. All right, Preston, welcome to the Hunting Stories Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question real quick before we get started. Is it Preston or is it Dr. Ward?
Yes, both, but call me Preston. Call me Preston.
All right. Perfect, man. Perfect. Well, thank you for joining us today. I'm super excited to hear your stories. You're actually the first referral where someone was like, you have to hear his story. He's got a good one for you. Armando with the bow hitch, who I think was episode 6. So very excited to hear what you have to tell us today. Obviously, I know who you are, but why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I guess I should say it's Dr. Ward only to people who make me mad. No, I'm just joking.
It's like bring out the middle name for a parent, right?
Exactly. No, I'm just joking. No. So yeah, I'm Preston, Dr. Ward, from the owner of MtnPhysio. So I started my practice about 4 years ago now, and it's physical therapy for hunters, archers, bow hunters. And a little bit about me. I grew up here in Salt Lake, and I'm married. I have one little girl. She's a little daughter. She's 8 years old. We've got a couple of bird dogs we do a lot of hunting with, and then we have some mules as well that we ride. A lot of mules, actually. So that's where a lot of these stories that we'll talk about come into, because we use mules on almost everything. Grew up in Salt Lake though, and just hunted my entire life. And the last, I'd say 7-8 years, just kind of really just almost done exclusively archery hunting. And so I work with the USA archery team. That's kind of a cool thing. And just really got this niche down for being a physical therapist, and really kind of started up the physical therapy world for archers and bow hunters. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll say out there, I am a client. I'm a brand new client. I think we've had basically 1.5 calls. And I'm going to post at the end of this, because this episode is going to come quite a bit later. I'm going to post my progress just at the end as a little snippet, because I've never had success. I've had a lingering back problem my entire life. I grew way too fast between 7th and 8th grade. I told you this already, Preston. But it's just an injury that I have. It fires up every 6 months, and hopefully Preston and I are going to get rid of this thing. And so I'll let you guys know. This episode should come out probably in the middle of hunting season, and I'll let you know how I'm feeling. And hopefully it's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to give you all the contact information for Preston, so you guys can get in touch with him if you have some kind of lingering issue that's ailing you. So,
yes, thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'll put links to your website and your email and Instagram and all that stuff in the show notes. So if anyone's looking for that information, you can find it there.
Awesome.
But yeah, so Preston, why don't you set the stage, man? Let us know kind of where we are. I mean, how many stories do you have for us? If you don't have an exact number, that's fine. We can just dive into it.
Two, roughly 3. I think, okay, the stage, here we go. Here's the stage. We're going to say that it's, I can't even remember. November 2020. What are we in now? 2022,
Yes, sir.
November 2020, we'll say. That's when this kind of all started. So let's talk about, the biggest thing probably to talk about would be my bison hunt. Drew a once in a lifetime, my bison hunt. So I guess maybe even the stage starts before that, because I think everyone has that animal that they're like just dream of, like that's the one animal that I want to take, whether it's a caribou, whatever it is. And so for me, it's always been a buffalo. It's always been a bison. And I've always wanted to do it with my bow, kind of gone back and forth between bow and, muzzleloader and stuff like that. Just kind of the nostalgic feeling of buffalo hunting. So, let's see. Anyway, so yeah, it all came down to, I put in for what's called the sportsman's tag here in Utah. And so in Utah, they give one sportsman's tag, which basically means they give, for everyone that applies to it, the sportsman's tag is basically the best tag in the state for that species. So for an elk, you can hunt any elk unit. For a deer, you can hunt any deer unit. So basically gives you statewide privileges to hunt wherever you want, whenever you want, meaning there is a season. My season was from August 1st all the way till January 31st. So 6 months long to hunt a buffalo with any weapon. So if I really wanted to, I could have done rifle August 1st. There's only a couple units really in Utah that have bison. So that's kind of the stage. I found out that I drew it was awesome. Like really, again, I put in, and I kind of put in, think like last minute, like, someone's got to draw. I was like, it could be me. Someone's got to draw. And literally like about 5 days later, they emailed me saying and it was a weird email because I was at work and it said successful. And I was like, what is going on? Successful? What did I even put in for? And then I just about lost it. I was so ecstatic.
Oh my God. How many of these tags do they have per species?
So one per species. So one buffalo tag. So, and I guess to put into perspective, like for me, I've always kind of been, I don't know, I guess I'd say blue collar hunter as far as just like, to us, we go hunting. I've been hunting my entire life, since I can remember 2-3 years old, and sitting up on hills and stuff like that, taking our mules and our horses and just being in terrible weather and being, 2 years old, crying because I'm cold and in a sleeping bag, but excited to be there. But so we've always kind of been this, like, I'd say blue collar hunting family where like we go to shoot. I'm happy to shoot a cow just so that we can have the meat for the family, for the freezer. And so to put into perspective, this tag, the governor, I don't know how that works, but the governor gives out a tag, or it's called the governor's tag. So, and they do like a deer, an elk, and a bison as well. So the bison's tag sold that year for $80,000. So I had a $80,000 tag in my pocket from someone who just likes to go cow hunting, elk hunting, and just have an elk in the freezer. So it was wild.
Do you know like the rough odds? Like how many people put in for that with only one tag being drawn?
I don't know. I want to say I heard the number was like 30 to 40,000 or something like that, but I could be making that up. And it may be even more, maybe less. I don't know though. I'd have to look into that, but it felt like I won the lottery. It really did. My wife actually joked. She's like, and I was like, well, we could sell it. And she's like, why don't we sell it and pay off our house? And I'm like, I'll go hunting. Never mind. So yeah. I don't think you necessarily can sell it, but it was kind of the joke. Like we should sell this and make some money off of it, but it's okay. Yeah. It was good. It was fun. It was all about the experience. And so that's kind of the start of it. And then then I started scouting and stuff like that. And I went down. So buffalo, if anyone's hunted buffalo are weird animals. Like I'll tell you, they're just weird. Like they're not like elk. They're not like deer. Like we got in on multiple stalks, and I think I could count 8. I think we got in on about 10 to 12 stalks, all within bow range. So it's easy to stalk in on them. Mm-hmm. But to get a shot, like if they're bedded down or if they're in these thick pines and stuff like that, or pinions, was really hard. And so what I say is they're weird is their sense of smell is so good that like the wind would change. And instead of like a mule deer and elk where it kind of maybe the wind changes and they wind you and they kind of look around and they're looking your direction, like what's going on. Buffalo seriously will get that wind and they will just take off. Like they don't even, they just stand up. Like, so a 2,000 pound animal just stands up and just runs. and they don't stop for 5 miles. Like I'm dead serious when I say that. Like they just keep running. It's wild. They're weird animals.
For the first mile, you can feel the earth moving as they run.
Seriously, it was like that. So we spent a lot of scouting trips going down there, and actually didn't get kind of got skunked and didn't see any. And then we took the mules to another area and packed in and found some nice bulls and everything. And so yeah, with that tag, I was able to shoot a cow or a bull. So obviously I knew I wanted to shoot a bull, and I knew I wanted to do it with my bow. And so I kind of spent all summer long perfecting my arrow, I guess I would say, to harvest a buffalo. And so I shot a 545 grain arrow, probably only 200 and I'm going to guess 50 feet per second or something like that. Pretty slow, out of 70 pounds. And so I'll kind of jump into that story, but I got a complete pass through, and that's all I wanted, was a complete pass through. So I was pumped.
That's awesome. I think my arrow right now is about 550, 555.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's right there in the same range.
Yeah. How tall are you?
6'4".
Yeah. So you got the draw length and everything to get some kinetic energy and stuff behind that.
Yeah, I've never measured the speed, but they zip faster than any of my friends, but they're all shooting 55 pounds. So
yeah, I'm not that tall, so it's hard to get the speed. But anyways, so that worked out well. And I guess really kind of the start of the story is, again, we scouted and stuff like that. And how I wanted this buffalo tag to be is I was going back and forth between a unit where we could take the mules and the horses in and do that, but it would have been really hard to take the family. And actually what happened is, a buddy of mine who runs an outfitting business, he reached out and said, let's go get you on as well down there. And so the reason why I kind of chose the specific area was mainly because I wanted my whole family there. And so in the one area, it would have been hard to get my whole family down. And then the other one, where I ended up taking the buffalo, we could get the whole family and spend a whole weekend. So I always said, like, everyone's invited to come experience a buffalo hunt. So I think on the opening day the first major weekend we went hunting down there, I think we had 20 some odd people down there for that. It was pretty fun.
Wow. Cool. That's awesome.
So, and then, then this is another part of the story, is that, like, last year in Utah, there were some monsoonal like rains that wiped out roads and stuff like that. So a lot of the times that we went down there, like, roads were completely washed out in this desert. And so kind of put a change of plans. But anyways, so how it all started, I'll say, like, the time, like I said, we went down a couple weekends and we found some buffalo, and we found a bunch of them, and just trying to kind of size it up. I'll tell you, it was, again, this was one of the most stressful hunts that I've ever been on, from someone that just likes to go shoot spikes or bulls or, cows for just the meat. Everyone, I'll tell you, what was most stressful about it was everyone seemed to have an opinion about it. So I had people telling me, don't hunt it in August because you'll shoot it and you'll spoil all the meat. I had people telling me you'll never shoot one with a bow. You can't get that close. I had people telling me, shoot it with a rifle, shoot it, in October and in November, shoot it in January. I had people telling me everything. And so it made for a really stressful tag, because people were telling me, don't go there, don't go to that unit, go to that other unit. And so it was just like, I had so many people's opinions that it made it actually kind of tough.
All those armchair hunters that probably none of them have actually had a buffalo tag before, but they all have their opinions, right?
They all have their opinions. Exactly. And so I guess, if that is you, or even on any other hunt, just be happy for other people, I think is what what that comes down to. But, so when we went out, actually, it was pretty fun. Like I said, I had my whole family, we got in on multiple stalks, and, again, we got within 20 yards multiple times, bow distance, sitting there waiting. I mean, we're in the middle of August, really the beginning of August, and it's 100 and, it's seriously 100 degrees down in the desert. And so rightly so, people were worried of, these animals spoiling, and they spoil so quickly with how they retain their heat. I think they did someone told me they did a study where they, like in the middle, like in 40 below or something like that, they put hide and all the meat and stuff like that in the cooler or something, and still the animal's temperature was like a 78 degrees, or I don't know, something crazy. Like,
yeah,
they just retain their body heat. So
I believe I read this in the Steven Ranella's book on buffalo, American buffalo. Have you read that?
I did read that, yeah, and maybe that's where I'm pulling it from.
That might be. Yeah, they took all of the cold weather animals they could find, like a yak and all these different things, and they basically put it in a container and tried to drop the temperature in their container until their heart rate changed, right?
Yeah.
And they couldn't get it cold enough for the buffalo's heart rate to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that stood with me when I read that book. I was like, wow, that is a creature. And I went to the University of Colorado, so I am a buffalo at heart. So it's sad to hear you shooting them, but I'm excited to hear the rest of the
story. Well, yeah, someone's got it, I guess, but no, I'm just joking. No, they, so the rest of the story is we got in on multiple stalks, and then we ended up having to go home that weekend. So the first weekend, actually, I got within about 60 yards of a nice bull, a herd of about 20 or 25. I was with my buddy. It was just he and I. We wanted to go down on an opening weekend. The governor's tag went down. They filled their tag. And so I wanted to go down and just see what we could do. And I was sitting there 60 yards, and I ended up calling my wife because she wasn't there with me on that hunt. And she was coming down the next weekend with my whole family. And I call her up and I said, I'm sitting 60 yards from a really nice bull. She's like, well, if you want to shoot it, shoot it. And I ended up passing, and people ended up telling me, they're like, why did you pass on that? Like, you're sitting there. And so, and mainly the reason why is I just didn't have my family there. And that's what I wanted, is them to experience it. And so the second weekend we went down, I had my whole family, we got multiple stalks in and stuff. And again, never sealed the deal. The third weekend we went down, it was my wife and my daughter and I, and then my good buddy who runs that outfitting business called Henry Mountain Bison Hunts. And his name's Jaden, and then his family as well. So it was the I don't know, he's got the 7 of us. So it was a lot of fun. We did a lot of scouting. And so the day that I killed my buffalo, I think it was August 14th. And what happened is we went out early in the morning, similar to hunting. And we got out, he ended up seeing some buffalo down low. And so he's like, I'm going to go over there. And then as he looked back, he saw these buffalo that I went after. There was about, I'm going to guess 80 or 100 of them, and in a herd. And so I went up after that herd to get a little bit closer. And so he spent the morning kind of going up and looking at some other bulls and everything. And so in the meantime, what I did is I ended up getting up closer, parking the ATV, and then hiking about 1.5 miles down into where these bulls were. And I could hear them grunting, like they're rutting hard at this time. And the bull that I actually shot was probably the herd bull. He was just rutting up, like just chasing all the cows, everything else like that. I watched him breed multiple cows, like was just, biting off other people. So kind of just like the meanest of the bunch, which was kind of fun. So what happened is I got in early at I got an early morning. I basically sat up on a hillside. So what I remember from this is I was up on this hillside. I sat up on the hillside just watching and just waiting really for the wind to change. The wind was kind of blowing straight down the canyon towards them. I was a few hundred yards away, just videoing them and just kind of getting an eye to feel for which one was a good bull. The wind changed. So then I was able to get even closer, and they ended up moving up into these onto this little terrace, we'll say. And then the herd split, and about 30 or 40 of them stayed with this bull and these cows and stuff like that. And so then what I did is I kept getting closer, and I do recall. So I dropped my pack. Like I remember going after them and dropping my pack, dropping all my water, just wanted to go in quietly. I remember then at one point I left my spotting scope. And then at one point I left my firearm, my side, or my 9mm on the ground, like just in different areas. So then later I had to actually go find them all, because I was like just trying to go as light as I could. And I got within about 200 yards of this herd, just watching them kind of mill through these trees. And I was then kind of left with the last hurdle was I had to come down a face that had very like patchy trees on it. It was pretty open brush, or pretty open. Mm-hmm. And I basically just sat on my butt and just scooted down as slowly as I could, trying to stay to the shadows, but there wasn't really many shadows. At this point, it was probably, I'm guessing, noon or 1 o'clock. And so like it took all morning to try to get into this position.
Yeah. I want to ask, you mentioned a little bit about their sense of smell. Do they have good vision? Are they pretty spooky when they see things, or?
They don't have great vision is what I recall. Their sense of smell is phenomenal. But their vision is not as good.
Okay.
Okay. And so, I basically, so I scooted on my butt all the way down, probably like 100 yards. I'm going to say 150 yards down this, like steep little rocky little hill, just trying to go as quiet as I could, but stay as low as I could and everything like that. At this point, they were all kind of milling out in these trees and stuff, like on this little terrace. And then I got to the bottom with my bow. Basically, all I had was my bow, and that's it. My bow, my binoculars, and rangefinder, right? And I got to the bottom. So now the last hurdle was an open sagebrush flat to get to the next set of junipers where they were all bedded. Again, I was all by myself at this point. And then my buddy, he was at this point on his way over to kind of set up and watch. So I ended up what happened is I ended up again scooting another probably 75 yards through a sagebrush flat with small, like very small, I'm talking like 3-inch, pinyon junipers around, just scattered, like only a couple. So I'd move from one to another. And at one point I could hear the bulls, like I could see them. And I was probably only 120 yards away from them, but I just had to make it that extra little bit. So I was trying to get within like 30 to 40 yards for a good shot. Right. And with, like I said, with buffalo, it seems like I could always get within that, but it was just hard to seal the deal. So at one point, the bull actually that I ended up shooting, he came out into this sagebrush flat. And so this is actually where I almost kind of got a little bit scared, because he like came out just running and stuff like that. And I had like a 50-yard shot at him, like a good shot. He came out for a second and was just kind of milling in the sagebrush flat where I was. I'm like, I could easily just get killed or stepped on, really. So it was actually kind of sketchy. But then he went right back into the trees chasing his cows and stuff like that. And so he had some, like on one of his horns was kind of busted up and like frayed. And so I could see a bunch of stuff in his afro, I guess I'll say, like where he's been rubbing the trees and everything. And so I knew it was him. So I made it through that sagebrush flat, got to this juniper, called my buddy up, and he's now up on the hillside that I kind of scooted down on my butt. And so he's maybe 150 yards away, and he's telling me, yeah, that bull's in there, good bull. He's a nice bull. He'll score well, all sorts of things. And again, this is everything that's going through my head is, I want to shoot a nice bull. I really want my family here. I really want my brother here. He's not here at this point. He had something else go on with his family or something and couldn't come. And so he's like the number one hunting partner that I have, that I always do everything with. And so I was like, should I shoot? Should I wait? Should I, wait 3 or 4 weeks to do it? Or should I shoot this bull when I get a chance? And so then I scoot to another pinyon juniper. And at this point, I'm about 40 yards or so from a herd of about 10 to 12, a herd of about 20. And that bull that I want to shoot is in there, and he's right by a cow. Then I scoot a little bit further. And at this point, there's really only about 3 big pieces of sagebrush. And then I'm hiding right in the shadow of a pinyon juniper, just waiting for the bulls to make a move. So I'm only 20 yards from one bull, and I can hear him breathing. I can hear him, and I'll see him stand up and then bed back down. And I mean, I'm telling you, this is probably, so August 14th, it's probably, I'm not lying when I say almost 100 degrees outside. It's 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just waiting for them to kind of make the move. And what happened is there was actually like a freak little storm that came in as well. It was that just, it didn't rain a lot, but it rained just some like droplets. And so I remember specifically, it's funny when you said earlier, like, talk to about the rain and stuff like that, because I remember seriously, I didn't have water from all morning long. I left my pack there, and I remember it raining and just trying to catch rain droplets in my mouth, trying to get something, because I was just like parched.
Oh man.
And so it was pretty wild. And then what happened is, yeah, so the bulls would stand up and then bed back down, and then stand up, bed back down. They'd kind of bump into each other. And like, again, I'm only 20 yards from one bull. And I'm trying to figure out which bull it is that I'm going to shoot, which one's the big one, which one was chasing all the cows and stuff like that. And my buddy's telling me, okay, I think it's this bull. And then he stands up and I can see that it is. And so then he beds back down with this cow. Well, for whatever reason, I think it was roughly, I'm going to say 3 or 4 o'clock that I ended up shooting the bull. It was, for whatever reason, out of the blue. Again, this is how weird they are. The wind must have changed or something, because they literally stood up and just like stampeded through these pinyon junipers and just took off. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I didn't feel the wind change at all. Well, I look up, and that bull that I was after stood around a little bit longer with his cow. At this point, he was 35 yards away. So he's staring there, kind of looking over his shoulder at me. So I range him 35 yards. I get ready to draw back. As soon as I do, he takes off. He sees the movements. He and his cow take off. They run out to about 70 yards, turn, and then just the perfect window through some, again, sagebrush, pinyon, junipers, stop, stare at me at 70 yards. And so again, I range, get a good range, 70 yards. And at this point, I draw back thinking, I've got what I need here. I have my wife and my daughter, and that's mainly what I wanted to see, is I wanted them to experience the hunt. And so I have them here. They'll be able to see this. And so I'm like, he's a nice bull. I could hunt, for the next 5 months, really, if I wanted to, but I've also got to get back and get some stuff done. I got to work, actually. And
you just want a glass of water at this point.
I just want a glass of water. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take the shot. He's a nice bull, and I've got a good shot. And so I draw back and shoot. And as soon as I do, my buddy's watching this through his binoculars. And all of a sudden he just sees the bull just kind of lurch up and then turn. And as he does, the arrow falls out the other side. So again, complete pass through. When I shot, I was shooting these white veins, and I just remember this arrow just flying perfectly. I had a small window of maybe like 1.5 or 2 feet to hit him in, because this other bull was kind of covering up the backside of him. Mm-hmm. And so I shot, hit him perfect, went right through, hit him low. And so buffalo, their anatomy is you actually have to hit them nice and low, because their spine comes down where their hump is. So if you shoot them like center of the body, oftentimes people will actually hit them up in the meat up in the spine there, and it doesn't do anything to them. They will live. And so you got to shoot them a little bit lower. So I shot him low, hit him low. He runs off. At that point, I literally just like fall to my knees, and I'm super, super excited. Like, I just shot a bull, and my buddy, he's screaming. He's like, dude, you just killed a giant bull. And we're hooping and hollering and all sorts of things. And and I'm at that point, I'm like, oh man, I'm just doubting everything. I'm like, I think I hit him too far. I think I hit him too low, all sorts of things. He's like, dude, you shot him. He's a dead bull. Don't worry about it. And I'm just like, and then like the emotion just comes and it just drains out of me. And I start like crying and stuff. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And so then he's like, get up here. I got you a glass of water. Come up here and we'll let him, run, do his thing and die. And so we run up there and collect my I don't think I actually collected my pack at all. Yeah, I didn't yet. So I run up there and we start talking, and then he's like, well, let's give it a little bit of time. Let's go get the backpacks and the 4-wheelers and go get our wives and stuff. So I go up there and I tell my wife and daughter, call them up, that I shot a bull, and they're super excited. And they meet us kind of down there, and then we get the backpacks. At this point, a weird storm again comes in, and now it just pours rain for, I'm going to say 15, 20 minutes. So now I'm thinking, great. Now the blood trail that we had is completely washed away. How am I going to find this bull? And so, I mean, I'm talking like mud puddles and stuff, like legit rain. The rain that happens when you're, after you shoot something that you don't want to happen because you're afraid of that blood being washed away. So, what we do is we ended up getting the whole family, get the backpacks on. So it's now my buddy and his boy. It's my wife and with a backpack, me with a backpack. My buddy's boy is 9 years old, I think 8 years old at the time, and my daughter is 7 years old at the time. And so then it's all of us, and it's about 5. What time? That's probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock. We ate something really quick, and then so I think we had left the bowl. By the time we hiked back up by the time we got back to the bowl, it would maybe have been an hour or so. Not very long. Maybe an hour and a half. It felt a lot shorter than maybe it was, but we knew we had to get to it quickly so that it wouldn't spoil. So we get back down there. We find right where we're at. We find the arrow. It has blood on it. And then we start following blood and the tracks and stuff. And my buddy, he's really good. Like, it was pretty cool to see, actually, because sometimes the blood would be washed away, but he's like, look, there's its footprint right there. And it's just cool to see those people that know how to really track an animal, like from where their footprints are. So I actually learned a lot about that. And my other buddy ended up shooting a nice buck about 2 weeks later. And he called me up. He's like, dude, come help me find this buck I shot. And so I am up there, and I'm like, we're following like drops of specks of blood, and like over the course of 30 yards and stuff like that, 40 yards. But what I was doing is I was following this buck's track, and I ended up finding this buck of my buddies. And so awesome. it was pretty cool. So anyways, we're after this buffalo, we're finding the tracks, and then we start seeing like just blood pouring out on both sides. So the water didn't wash it away. And I remember going through underneath one little brush, and it was probably only maybe 250 yards or so from where I shot it. Oh, I lift up the brush and I look up, and he's just piled up right there in the shade. And I was just like, oh man, I was so ecstatic. And I remember I did the thing that everyone does, like, I don't know where it's at. And then your wife or your hunting partner or whatever, they're like, seriously, you can't find it? And then they look at it, they're like, oh my gosh, it's right there. So it was cool. It was fun. And then we took some pictures. So what was hard is these bulls you're talking almost a 2,000 pound animal, right? So there's really only the 3 of us that can do anything. So we tried to get it up to take a good picture, but its leg was caught behind him. And so we couldn't really do anything. And it was just like, I wanted a really good picture, but we didn't really get awesome pictures. And so we got a few good pictures, but at this point it was like, okay, I think at this point it was 8 o'clock. By the time we got in the bowl, we started cutting it up at about 8:30. We took some pictures for a minute, and then we started cutting it up at about 8:30. We didn't finish skinning it, cutting it up, packing it up and everything until about midnight. Mm-hmm. And then, so what was kind of fun about this whole thing is like my daughter was there, my buddy's son was there. And like, we were talking about just the whole process, and the kids were tired. It was 8:30, they just hiked a couple miles. And so we started a fire, and they fell asleep as we're just out there by the fire, cutting things up, and like, just such a cool, like, I relived that, and I'm like, gosh, that was so much fun. And
it's like a core memory.
So then we put it on, we put it in the packs and everything. My buddy had a pack wheel, so we got all the meat out. I think each one of our packs weighed roughly 100 pounds. I know my pack probably weighed close to 100 pounds, and all I had was the hide in it to mount it. So it was full of blood, right, and stuff like that. So it's super heavy, but it probably weighed close to 100 pounds. My wife, she ended up carrying some of the meat on her pack. She probably had almost 100 pounds. My buddy did as well. And then we had the head, the meat, the rest of the stuff on this pack wheel. So it's midnight. We wake the kids up and we start hiking back. And then it starts like thunder and lightning and like raining on us and stuff. And we're trying to make our way back. And it's a good 2 mile. Like it was so heavy with that much weight on. And I remember the kids just being like, not really complaining, like, they're tired, but they're not complaining at all. And actually I remember my daughter saying to my wife once, like, Mom, you got this. It's just a little bit more, just a little bit further. And so anyway, so it was cool because my daughter was there and she was really encouraging my wife, like, you got this. And so she was really trying to like, just encouraging her. And so it was just super cool. It was midnight. No, it wasn't. It was way later than that. It was like 2 in the morning. And we didn't get back to camp until, so finally, I mean, I'm talking, it was like we were down in this hole. And so we were probably a good 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from camp, to the ATVs even. And then we had to ride the ATVs back to camp. And I remember getting back to camp, just being so exhausted. And my wife she's like, that was seriously one of the hardest, most physical things that she's ever done. And so it was a good experience.
Has she done many other pack outs, or is that one of the first ones?
No, that was her first one. And so that's kind of why I was like, that's what I wanted. I wanted my wife and I wanted my daughter there. I wanted them to experience that. And now honestly, like, thinking bigger picture, like now we've enjoyed this buffalo and shared buffalo meat with friends and family. And like every time, like my daughter brings it up, like, yeah, we packed that. Remember when we packed that buffalo out, or remember when we were hiking at midnight or 3 a.m. And like, now, like, it just means a lot to them. And that's kind of what I wanted. I just wanted them to see, like, this is where meat comes from. Yeah. This is what we live off of. This is what's important to us to be able to maintain and keep these traditions as a family. And it's important that we're staying healthy and active, and we're trying to do our very best to, be able to put in all this preparation to really respect these animals. And so, that was just more like bigger picture. That's what I was hoping that they would see. And now we see that and stuff. And so we didn't get back to the truck, or we didn't get back to camp till about 3:30 in the morning. And so from when we shot it, like, it was just a long day. We ended up actually cooking a burger because we were going to have burgers that night. So we ended up cooking a burger at 3:30 in the morning. And
I was going to ask if you had some like tenderloin or backstrap, like when you got back.
We didn't. No, we didn't. We should have, but we had burgers that night, and then the next morning we packed it all up and we headed home to get it on to the taxidermy. So, God, those early season hunts are tough. Like I've lost some deer in velvet because of those early season warm hunts and stuff like that, and so we didn't want that to happen to the buffalo. So really, again, people were like, don't shoot it early August because you'll lose all the meat and stuff. It'll all spoil. People were saying you can't do it with a bow. You can't get close enough. And so I just was like, you know what? I'm doing it with a bow. Absolutely. You can do it with a bow. Go. People have done it with bow since the beginning of time.
Yeah. That's actually probably how we did it the very first time.
Exactly. Right. And so I was like, it can be done. And so I was just super happy and pumped how it all worked out. And he's a really nice bull, scores well. And apart from that, like, it was just more, just the whole matter of the fact of just being with my family, and it was just cool. I'm just happy about it. And it was just a good experience. Like I just can't. And now again, that was my once in a lifetime buffalo. And like, that was like my dream animal. So now I'm like, shoot, now what's next? Now what do I want to go hunt?
Now you're daydreaming of caribous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm actually dreaming of another horned animal. I want to go get a mountain goat, because horned animals are kind of interesting. They're fun they're hard to score, but they're also interesting, different than a antlered animal. But anyways.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great story, Preston. The hunting aspect of it is great. And it's really an interesting hunt. But more so than that, you caught me like you hit a nerve, because I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and what you're talking about doing it with your family and like having that experience is something that I've been daydreaming about. Obviously my kids aren't old enough to do that yet, but that's where I want to get to. So it's awesome that that's what you did. It's awesome that you passed on a bull so that you could have that experience that you were looking for. And it's just, it's a cool story from top to bottom. Yeah. So thank you very much for sharing that one, man. That was great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fun.
We'll share some photos of that animal too. I've been looking at it over your shoulder this entire interview, and it's a monster. So yeah, we're gonna have to share some pictures with everybody on the Instagram account. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, it's always awkward with jumping from one story to another because I feel like I owe some time and something to the first story. But let's go. What else do you got for us?
So I think the next one that I'm going to jump into, and this won't be as long, but because I don't remember it as much, but would be my first, the first animal that I killed with a bow. So yeah, again, hunting has always been a huge thing in my life, something that I've always been passionate about, something I've done from upland hunting when I was 12 years old to big game hunting. So as early as I can remember, actually, I don't know if I should say it, but I remember my dad said, I remember my dad one time, I think I was 13 years old. So I was about ready to have my permit or something like that. And he's like, if a buck comes by, take my gun and I'm going to go and see if these guys have, if our family, if the rest of our hunting party is over here. And I remember a buck coming out at like, I don't know, with his muzzle loader and me trying to shoot at it. And he's like, runs back. Did you hit it? I'm like, no, I did not hit it. I have no idea what I was. It's just one of those crazy stories. But anyways, it was
That's
fun.
That's awesome.
So,
Your dad probably said that it's just in jest. And then you ended up actually shooting at a deer. That's amazing.
It was one of the, exactly. He's like, if a buck comes out, and literally like, as he left, this buck, like little 2-point comes out. And I'm looking with my binoculars, like my old, like Tasco binoculars, like, is it a buck? No. Is it? Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And I'm like, so then it was with this old Hawkins Kennedy, like 50 caliber muzzleloader. It's so funny. Man. But anyways, so I'll tell you though, my other experience would be probably me getting into archery hunting, which was, so I was, I think 16, 17 years old. And I didn't own a bow. Never shot a bow before in my life, actually, probably not even, maybe at scout camp once or something like that, but never shot a bow. And we put in for a limited entry we put in for a limited entry elk unit here in Utah, a good unit that we knew well, that we could take the mules and stuff. And so I think I had 3 points or something like that. And then we got the email saying, we probably didn't get emails back then, but we got the notification that we were successful. And so my brother and I, we both put in separately, actually. So the fact that we both drew was pretty cool. He had a few more points than I. And then when we found out it was archery, we thought I remember us having a conversation like, well, crap, we don't even own a bow. Like, what are we supposed to do? And so you find out in May that you draw the tags. And so we ended up going to the store. I think I worked at Sportsman's Warehouse at the time. So I went and bought a bow at Sportsman's Warehouse. The funny thing is, like, I look back at that arrow and that setup now, like that bow was probably like a 31-inch draw. I'm like a 28-inch draw maybe right now. So just way like not even fit for me. Like they didn't set it up for me. The arrow was like probably just factory cut. So it wasn't even like cut down at all. And,
oh man.
I remember practicing.
Something that actually sparked a memory. I'm going to say this to all the listeners. If you go get a bow, go to a good bow shop, please. I remember my first bow, I was shooting these arrows, shot them for a couple of years. Fortunately, I only shot them at a turkey and nothing else. But when I went to go get my new bow, which I bought back in January of this year, I showed them my arrows. They're like, you're basically dry firing your bow every time you shoot. Like I was way underspined and, could have seriously hurt myself. And I've been doing that for years. So make sure you go to a good shop because there's all sorts of terrible things that can happen.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was wild. So we practiced so we went and bought bows. We practiced all summer long, shooting tennis balls, swinging, we'd go swing them down and we'd shoot them and we'd hit them. And like, we got actually pretty dang good at shooting and archery. And so then what we did is, so we went down on the hunt, and I remember we packed in about 8 or 10 miles with the mules, set up the wall tents and everything. And it probably was just one of those times that was meant to be because the bulls were just bugling. Like the first weekend they weren't. The second weekend we went down, the bulls were just bugling like crazy. It was one of those like rut fests and everything. And so my brother ended up shooting his bull that weekend. We ended up chasing it. And had about 20 cows with it. And so we would bugle, it would bugle back, and then it would run over to the next ridge. And then we'd chase it, bugle, it kept doing that. So finally, actually, his bull ended up circling back because some cows did. And crazy, this was really crazy. This was really exciting too. But I remember, so we were kind of walking the sagebrush little side hill, and I was probably 10, 15 yards in front of my brother. And I remember just kneeling down in the sagebrush, and all of a sudden just seeing this ginormous monster elk, this bull, just kind of walking straight towards me. Now all I could see is it kind of came up and over this hill. So all I could see was antlers until I could see its face. And then it's literally 10 yards from me, just staring at me. And my brother, he was up in the trees a little bit behind me. And I remember just kneeling down, just trying to pull my bow back as quiet as I could. And I could not budge that thing. It was so hard. And as I'm doing that, I all of a sudden I hear this, and I hear this arrow. I'm like, Taylor, you could have pierced my ear or something. It felt like it was that close.
Shit.
He was a little bit away from me, but he ended up shooting at it. He had a good broadside shot. And so he hit this bull elk. So I'm 10 yards from all this happening, and the elk takes off and runs about 80 yards and tips over. And so that was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Then the next weekend, so that same weekend, yeah, this is crazy. I'm telling you, this is wild. Is that same weekend, we are cleaning up my brother's elk and everything. The next day we're getting ready to pack it out and stuff. I'm like, I'm going to go hunting. I might as well. You guys continue to pack up camp. I'm going to go see if I can get a bull. I walk down this road, literally maybe 400 yards, 500 yards. I start bugling, and a bull bugles back and comes right in on a dime to me at about 30 yards. So now this is my first time archery hunting. I didn't own a rangefinder, but I had pins at 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, maybe 70. And, didn't own a rangefinder at the time. I just was like, yeah, let's shoot it. Whatever. This is just archery hunting, right? So it's funny how technical we've become. Which is, I think, a good thing, because a lot of time, actually, this is a tangent. There's a lot of bans on technology nowadays, when I think it actually makes us more of an ethical hunter. But anyways,
yeah,
get off my soapbox there. But what happened is I bugled a bull in all by myself. I was sitting there. I ended up shooting, and I shot right over its back, and then it ran off. And so I go back, and I'm like, yeah, did you shoot anything? I'm like, I shot at something. And anyways, I didn't get a bull that time. We ended up packing out. Then we ended up packing back in the next weekend. My dad and I and my brother, my brother had to leave early with a friend. So then it was just my dad and I. So we're hiking around, and again, we bugle a bull in the morning, and I think he's 20 yards. I think he's 30 yards. He's probably right in at 20 yards. So again, no rangefinder. This is how terrible I was. I was 16, 17 years old. Didn't really know distances and things like that. Ended up drawing back, shooting again right over this bull's back. So I'm feeling so frustrated. I've missed two bull elk now, both bugled in. So then we hunt in that area. Then that evening we are hunting, my dad and I, and bugle a bull comes, another bull, we bugle another bull to us. But he ends up seeing us, and he comes up from this nasty canyon and sees us and takes off. And so I'm just feeling discouraged, gosh, the hunt's running, we have maybe a week or so left of the hunt. Am I going to even get one? And then we bugle again. And now at this point, it's getting pretty dark. And we hear another bull bugle. So another bull is coming up this kind of sagebrush flat area up to us. And so we're standing in front of this pinyon juniper / tree, something like that. Some pretty good coverage right behind us. And this bull is just bugling and just coming on a dime to us. And I remember sitting there with my dad as this bull is walking, I'm not lying, 20 yards from us. And so I'm kneeling down in the sagebrush, and I draw back, kind of hidden behind the sagebrush. And then I pull up, and this bull just keeps walking. It doesn't stop. And it's bugling its head off, and I'm thinking, what the heck? So I literally, out of the corner of my mouth, I remember whispering to my dad, like, Dad, call. I'm like, dude, call. Like, so he's got his hoochie mama call there, his Primo's hoochie mama call, right? He makes a cow call. This bull stops, looks right at us. I shoot, top pin goes completely through it. The arrow the next day we found on top of this, just laying on top of the sagebrush, and the bull runs and he piles up about 40 yards later. So, this was kind of crazy actually, is it was so dark at the night. Like, it wasn't so dark that we couldn't see, but it was dark enough that I remember looking through my peep sight and then at my sight, and then looking out of my peep sight to even make sure I was looking in my peep sight, because it was getting pretty dark.
Yeah.
And so anyways, ended up shooting this bull, and he is just a beautiful, nice bull. I have him taxidermy and mounted in my front room, and like just something super cool to be there with my dad. And then I could hear like the bull kind of like making like a, like they kind of like are running out of air and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, again, stressing out, like, oh man, I don't know if it was a good hit, Dad. And he's like, Preston, that's a dead bull right there. Like, you can hear it. And so we walked right up to it and found it and cleaned it up. And then as we were packing out with the mules the next day, like one of the mules we had didn't love packing meat. And so actually the elk antlers twisted up underneath, which is actually pretty sketchy because it twisted up underneath the mule. So I remember my dad just jumping off the animal, like grabbing his knife and just cutting leather straps, trying to get it away from underneath this mule that could land on these pointy antlers and get impaled. And then we'd kill it. Then we'd have to shoot over animals. So anyways, it was crazy, but it was just a cool experience to be there with my dad, and like something that I'll never forget. And that was a fun, super fun experience. Like, again, a fun hunt. And just, again, that was kind of that was the catalyst right there of me and my archery career and how much I loved it. And then I dabbled in some like spike hunting and rifle hunting, but ever since then, like, it's just kind of been 100% archery, because it's just those close encounters are so much fun in the archery hunt. And I love shooting rifles and stuff like that, but I'm like, just give me a bow. Like, I love it. It's so much fun. So anyways, that was those are the two good stories that I wanted to share.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it's funny how I've been talking to a lot of hunters, and they all have that moment that they know that hunting big game, archery is their thing. And that's often the story that they tell because it's important to them. So that's great. That's a great story, Preston. I want to actually tell you a quick story of a failure from last year. Your brother shooting the arrow past your ear actually reminded me of it. We're hunting, we have mule deer and elk tags. We're hunting early September in Colorado, and nothing. We're not seeing anything. Our game cameras were blowing up for months, but then a herd of cattle basically spooked everything out. But we were seeing a fair amount of does. So it's the last day of the hunt before we're going home, maybe the second to last day. And we're just frustrated. We're not even trying. We're just walking down this hillside. It's an open grass hillside. We're not trying to hide. We're spotlighted by the sun. And we're just heading to where we think the animals aren't, because we think there's no more animals. Either way, we all of a sudden see a doe. We're like, oh, meat is meat. And so we just stopped. And there's not a tree within 100 yards of us, just an open hillside. And this doe just was looking at us, walking right at us. And we couldn't have more sunshine on us. It's like 9 a.m. It's an eastern facing slope. So we're hiding nothing. And this deer is kind of just looking at us, and we're not moving. We don't know what to do. And we're just sort of standing there, and it's walking, and it keeps coming closer and closer and closer and closer. So I'm like, all right, well, I get my release on my bow, and I'm like, all right, range it. And my buddy he's 2 feet behind me. I can feel his bow brushing up on my backpack. And we spook the deer. The deer just busts and runs into these trees. But when it runs into the trees, we hear it like had spooked another set of deer that were right there. So apparently we found them all at one time. Either way, it spooked one deer up towards us, and it ran. And there's maybe one sagebrush bush, and it's, I don't know, 8 feet wide, 4 feet tall, but the deer goes right behind it. And so my buddy's like, I'm going to shoot it. And I'm like, don't shoot it. I'm like, do not fire your bow from like literally next to my head. Like I can feel his bow on my backpack. I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Just tell me the range. I'll take the shot, because we're in a line. him, me, and then the deer. And so the deer comes down, goes to feed. I go to full draw, and it spooks, and it runs to the other side of this bush, back up the other side, and it just stops. 23 yards. My buddy's like 23 yards. And so I'm at full draw, and I settle in to my anchor point. My peep is turned 90 degrees. I can't see a thing. When I pulled my bow back and I'm looking at that deer, it's not like I see the deer and I'm like, well, I don't really know where my pins are, but I'm going to hit it because it's close enough. I can't even see the deer because my peep sight is so sideways. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to do at this point. I'm not just going to fling an arrow with no idea. I was like, the deer's there because I can't see it. And, the peep sight should be where I'm aiming. But I let down, deer took off, and unsuccessful season.
Oh man, that is so frustrating.
Yeah, but the arrow over the shoulder just sort of reminded me of my buddy being like, I'm gonna do it. In retrospect, maybe we would have gotten a deer, but also maybe I would have taken an arrow in the shoulder. Who knows?
Exactly. It just hurt for a minute. Actually, it probably hurt pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, we weren't too far from camp.
I sometimes think about that, but no. That's so what I love about archery hunting is bow hunting is it's so. Like, I think at the one word, like, it's so frustrating. Bow hunting is just frustrating. There's everything that can go wrong seems to go wrong. And you're like, gosh, what the heck? But that's what makes it so much fun. Like I have a couple other mule deer stories that are just fun. Things that like hunts that you're like, I remember one time we were hunting mule deer with my brother. It was late at night. And I'm like, Taylor, there's no way. They're feeding up this like hillside. We're literally out in the middle of the open, just like you were saying. And I'm like, Taylor, there's no way we can get closer. We're literally just walking down this hillside sneakily, and quietly, I'll say. And I'm like, we're not going to get closer, Taylor. Take your shot. You're 85 yards away. He's like, we can get closer. I'm like, dude, we're not getting closer. I think we ended up getting to like 60 yards or something. And he ends up taking a shot and shoots a nice buck. And it's like, and then the next year we drew some limited entry deer tags and the same thing. I'm like, Taylor, okay, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go up and push this deer towards me, and it'll run right. It'll run right to me. Exactly. Deer drive. It'll run right to me. And I'm thinking to myself, this is never going to work. This is never going to work. And it worked. And it's like the times that I'm like, it's never going to work, they work out. And then other times I'm like, oh, it so totally worked out. It never does. Like, never can predict those animals, but
and not even deer. I have a turkey story where archery was ridiculous. It's a long story and it's a very funny story, and I'm sure I'll share it someday, but for the point of today where we're just talking about archery going bad, I'm in South Texas turkey hunting. I call this turkey in, it's right at my decoys, its head goes behind something, so I go full draw. And this is the beginning of COVID, mind you. So me and my buddy are like, I don't know, let's sit 7 feet apart. So he's sitting 7 feet over. I'm over here, and I go full draw, and my arrow unknocks. So I'm sitting there with full draw with no arrow, just sort of dangling, and I'm just psst, psst, buddy, psst, psst. I'm like, grab my arrow. So he's like belly crawling over to me, so that he can just grab the arrow, puts it back on my string, and then he thinks the job's done. And I'm like, let go of the arrow. And he's holding on, and I'm like, just let go. Eventually he lets go, and I let it fly. Aiming kind of high on the body and the turkey kind of drops his body, lifts his head gone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I would say about 80% of the neck just gone, bird immediately gone. So huge bird, the biggest turkey I've ever killed. But it's awesome. It's a funny story, and there's a lot more to it, but that's the part about archery just being ridiculous and an adventure in its own.
Talk about frustrating. Turkey hunting is frustrating, but anyways, just bow hunting in general is just, it's so fun. I love it. It's frustrating. That's the one word that I can think of, but it's so much fun. I love it. So.
Yeah. I'm the same. I've not had much success yet. I think that turkey is actually the only thing I've killed with my bow, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah. I think I brought this up multiple times to people, and I think it's maybe the progression of being a hunter, which is cool. I mean, you see the people like Cameron Haynes, I got respect for him. I got respect for all the people, those big names, John Dudley, all those people that just seem to kill things a lot. And they have maybe opportunities. Maybe they have something else, maybe they got some money to do it as well. But I just think of these people that have killed things year and after year after year after year. And as those proficient bow hunters. And it's funny because now I feel like the last few years I've had some decent success. Last year I killed my bison. The week after, I actually ended up killing a cow elk.
wow.
And so ended up, yeah. And then so it's come down to like now it's interesting. I feel like once you kind of get into that rhythm of like you can find the animals, you can get the stock in, you know how to do it. You're shooting your bow constantly. I mean, I'm shooting my bow almost year round. I shoot it pretty much year round in my
Yep.
basement and everything else. It's like I'm finally that proficient hunter with a bow that I feel like this year I'm like I'm gonna kill something. I don't know what it is. I'm gonna give myself enough tags that I'm gonna kill something. Maybe it's
Yeah.
I killed a turkey this year with my bow, but I have a deer tag, a couple elk tags this year, and I'll have an antelope tag. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm killing this year, but something's going down. So, anyways, I think
Yeah.
it's kind of fun to see. And I don't mean to say that cocky or haughty or anything like that. It's just I feel like it's kind of a fun place to be as a bow hunter, just to get to that point where you're like, I'm gonna kill something this year. I don't know what it is, but it's gonna be something.
Yeah, I'm working towards that. But what I've come to grips with personally is I'm going to do everything I can to sharpen my learning curve. But my real goal is to get my son and my daughter there. If they choose to be bow hunters, I want them to have the experience, the knowledge that I didn't have, because I've only been hunting for 6 years, and bow hunting for 3. So I'm going to make these mistakes to hopefully teach them not to. And hopefully it's a tradition that we can pass down from there.
Well, that'll happen because I'll tell you, my nephews, like, it's my brother and I that hunt together. We've hunted since we killed those elk together or our whole lives really, but bow hunting since then. But my nephews, that's all they've really done. And so my one nephew, like his first buck was killed with a bow, like, and just it's pretty impressive at 14 years old, killing a buck with a bow. Like it doesn't happen here. Mule deer hunting, I'll say maybe whitetail hunting, maybe it does, but, it'll happen for you and your kids as well. Like they're like, I'll say my nephews, they're just like, they're understanding the sport now. They're understanding like what to do, do's and don'ts. And your kids will be the same way. It'll be cool.
Yeah. I'm pretty excited about the future. So Preston, this was fun, man. This was fun. It's nice to talk to you about hunting and all these stories rather than my bad back. So thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you very much for jumping on here, man. Why don't we sign off? Why don't we let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, we'll get your back better. But find me at MtnPhysio.com. So it's www.MtnPhysio. So MtnPhysio.com. Instagram, I think it's MTN_physio. I'm on YouTube. It's got a YouTube channel with a bunch of different videos up. I'm actually bison videos up on there, so it's a good one. And then a bunch of exercises. And then Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I think TikTok as well. So just trying to figure out all that stuff, but pretty much social media and everything.
Yeah, you look like a TikToker. So okay.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
I don't either. Well, cool, Preston. Like I said, I'm going to jump off here and actually start my first day of the physical therapy, plan that we've put together. And so we're going to say goodbye to everybody for now, but then I'm going to jump in real quick and give them a status update, because I think that this episode is going to air a few months from when we're actually recording it. So hopefully we can send some business your way and we can help some people that maybe have some aches and pains that have been bugging them for a while, man. So thank you. This was fun.
Yes.
This is fun.
Thank you.
We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
This is my favorite thing to talk about is hunting stories. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you. Have a great one.
See you. Bye.
All right, guys, that's it. Another story in the books. I want to, of course, thank Preston again for coming on today and telling us his great stories. I also promised you guys a update on my back. It has been about a month and a half since I recorded that to while I'm doing this recording, and my back feels better than it ever has. Am I 100% no? But it's a work in progress. I'm able to hit the gym more often, more frequently, and harder than I have in years. And I'm feeling more prepared for the hunting season, which is about to kick off here in Colorado. Actually, on Monday, I'll be going antelope hunting. So I want to thank Dr. Ward for helping me this far, and hopefully we get this back thing completely under control so I can be a monster in the woods and hunt longer than I think I've ever really thought I would be able to. So thank you again, Dr. Ward. That being said, guys, please share the podcast. Give us reviews. We want to hear from you. We want to know what we're doing right. We want to hear what we're doing wrong. And even more important than that, if you have a great story, please share it with us. Give me a call or hit me up on Instagram. Hunting Stories _official. Also, don't forget to follow Preston at MtnPhysio on Instagram. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to all of his information so you can find him there. But if you have a lingering injury, make sure to touch base with him because he will help you out. So that's it, guys. Thank you very much again. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. And yeah, get out there and make some stories of your own. Thank you.